Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. Today we have a recap of the Georgia versus Ohio State college football playoff semifinal game at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And man, this was probably one of the best playoff games we've ever seen. This game was just amazing, down to the final play. Two of the best teams in the country battling it out. Two quarterbacks putting on an absolute show. Two really good head coaches. In my opinion, they called two of the best games I've seen all year from head coaches. Both sides did an excellent job. Now, I just want to dive in, do a little recap on this game. I want to start out with injuries. There were a lot of injuries on both sides. Ohio State, they lost tight end Cade Stover early on in this game. That definitely impacted them. He's a big time threat in the passing game, and he's an excellent blocker. He only had one catch, and he got hurt on it. He went up for a hurdle. He got hit in the legs, flipped over, landed on his hip. He ended up being out for the game. Marvin Harrison Jr. left halfway through the third quarter after a huge hit by Javen Bullard in the end zone. This was a weird play. CJ Stroud dropped back. He kind of just threw the ball. Personally, I thought it was just going to go in the stands or just out of bounds, but it actually ended up being in the back of the end zone. It stayed in play. Harrison went to make a play on it, and Bullard came in, hit him right when the ball got there, right on impact. They reviewed it for targeting. I don't think it was targeting. He led with his shoulder. If he led with his helmet, they probably would have called it because he was defenseless. But nonetheless, it took Harrison out of the game. Now this probably impacted the game more than anything. Because Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first half had over 100 yards, and he was cooking the Georgia secondary. So losing him, very impactful. But over for Georgia, they lost three really high impact guys, whether they were hurt coming into the game or got hurt during the game. Starting right tackle Warren McClendon, he did not start in this game. He barely played. He was only out there for a few snaps. Ohio State got a lot of pressure because of this, in my opinion. JT Tuamaloa, he got in there constantly, made Stetson Bennett step up in the pocket. A couple times it led to a sack, or it's like a 1 or 2 yard run. Chaz Chambliss, the outside linebacker for Georgia, one of their best run defenders, he got hurt and he left the game in the first half. And after he went out, Ohio State had some success running the ball. You could really notice that. Georgia had to put in some true freshmen, and they're just not physically up to par. They're really good pass rushers, but when it comes to stopping the run, they're just not there on the same level as Chambliss. Tight end Darnell Washington, a huge part of Georgia's offense, both in the running game, whether it's blocking or then on third down, him and Brock Bowers, probably two of the best tight ends in the country, probably the best tight end duo in the country. So Darnell Washington leaving definitely had an impact on Brock Bowers. Ohio State could solely focus on him. Georgia did bring in true freshman Oscar Delp, who was a very high recruit, but once again, he's a true freshman. He's never played in a game like this. He did come in and make some good blocks, though, but in the passing game, he's just not the same threat that Washington is. And then Ohio State running back Mayan Williams, he missed some practice time leading up to the game. He got a few snaps. He ended up having a touchdown, but after that, he was very limited. He had an ankle injury. He also had a stomach flu for a little bit prior to the game. He re-aggravated the injury in the game, the ankle injury. And after that, Dallin Hayden got a majority of the carries. Now, moving on to Ohio State offense. Ohio State looked unstoppable in the first half. Georgia secondary, they have a lot of guys from the team last year, and this looked like the 2021 SEC championship game when Bryce Young and Jamison Williams, John Mechie, and the boys, they put on a show. This looked just like that in the first half, at least. Ohio State dropped 28 points on them in the first half, and CJ Stroud, he finished the game with over 300 yards passing, 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. He averaged 10 yards completion. Big time game for CJ Stroud. I think he solidified himself as a top 2 draft pick, top 3. Whether a team wants to take a quarterback or Will Anderson, I guess it really just depends. But nonetheless, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, after watching the games yesterday, there's no way there's 2 better quarterbacks, in my opinion. Ohio State in this game, they definitely found a weakness in Kirby Smart's defense. whether Kirby was calling the plays or not, he definitely had a say. But Ohio State, they ran these crossing routes right behind the linebackers over and over again. Emeka Egbuka, he was probably the main target on all those, I would say. I think Harrison only had one catch on those crossing routes. Egbuka, he had 8 total catches in this game. I bet 4 or 5 of them were on those crossing routes, like 15 to 20 yard, right behind the linebacker. CJ Stroud had plenty of time. Ohio State's offensive line should probably be the MVP of this game for the Buckeyes. I mean, CJ Stroud had all day this game. He had a clean pocket. He didn't have to run, make plays out of the pocket. But when he did, I got to give CJ Stroud a lot of credit here. When he had to make a play outside the pocket, there was no problem doing it. We haven't seen this all year from him. We haven't seen it all year. Last game of the season, put everything on the line, got outside the pocket, making plays. This is what separated Bryce Young from CJ Stroud, in my opinion. But after last night, I think the gap's closer. And it might even be even. Stroud made a lot of great plays. He looked like the best player on the field all night. With that being said, Ohio State's offensive line dominated Georgia's pass rush. Now, Georgia on the D-line, I saw at least 4 true freshmen out there last night. 3 of them played a significant amount. You got to remember, their projected first-round pick coming into the season, Nolan Smith, was out of this game. He's been out for like the last couple months. So not having him has caused a lot of young guys to step up in these last couple games. Guys like Marvin Jones Jr. and Michael Williams, 2 5-star players, true freshmen. Michael Williams was a top 5 player in his class. He was a D-line recruit. He had to move the edge just because of depth reasons. Him and Marvin Jones, they really couldn't get pass rush at a constant level. Michael Williams did end up getting a sack in a big situation, but it just wasn't consistent, and Stroud consistently had time back there to launch passes down the field. Now moving over to Georgia's offense, running between the tackles is probably the best thing Georgia could have did in this game. I don't think they did it enough, but when they did, and when they blocked it good, they were popping big runs just every time, really. Every time they blocked it well, it was like a 30-plus yard run. I mean, just think about this. Stetson Bennett had negative 18 rushing yards, okay, on 7 carries. So he really hurt the average for rushing. Even with that, Georgia averaged over 5 yards per carry in this game. Kenny McIntosh, 5 carries for 70 yards, 14 yards a carry. He had a 52-yard run. Remember, he tripped down at like the 5-yard line, but they ended up scoring anyways. DeJuan Edwards, 8 carries, 58 yards, 7 yards per carry. Kendall Melton, he only had 3 carries, but he averaged 9 yards per carry. So like I said, when they were running it, in between the tackles, Ohio State really couldn't stop it. But when they stopped it, Georgia was getting nothing. They were either getting like 11, 12 yards or losing 1 or 2 yards. There really wasn't any in between. I thought Georgia should have ran the ball more. I think that's why they got down in this game, because they had to settle for field goals because they were throwing the ball, and they ended up getting in multiple 3rd and 10s due to incompletions on 1st and 2nd down. Now, Stetson Bennett, besides a few 3rd down passes in that interception that he just blindly threw out, I think it was to the running back, and Steel Chambers was in man coverage, and he intercepted it. He just threw a blind throw out there. But besides that and a couple 3rd down misses, Stetson Bennett played great overall. I mean, he finished with almost 400 passing yards. He finished with 398 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and averaged 12 yards of completion. Now, to me, that's an insane stat line, given how big this game was. Stetson Bennett put on a show. He played great. Ohio State, coming into this game, was probably the best team in the country at stopping tight ends and running backs in the passing game. Really, no team all year could pass it to their tight ends and running backs at a high level. Remember Notre Dame, the first game, Michael Mayer, he had a couple catches, but it wasn't like he was putting on a clinic out there, getting open at a high level. He wasn't. Just like last night, Brock Bowers only had around 60 receiving yards, 4 catches, 64 yards. He didn't have a single touchdown in this game, and a lot of his catches were at the very end of this game in the 4th quarter, right down the middle of the field. There were times when Jim Knowles for Ohio State, he just took his safeties completely out of the middle of the field for some reason. And Brock Bowers just kept running down the middle, and eventually he just kept getting open. No answer for him late in the fourth quarter. Aaron Smith, that 70-yard touchdown that he had, that was just insane. I think Ransom was in coverage, running down the sideline. He trips, no one near him. Aaron Smith, 76-yard touchdown. He ended this game with 3 catches for 129 yards, averaging 43 yards a catch. That's just insane. That's just crazy to think about, 43 yards a catch. And I mentioned Brock Bowers. He averaged 16 yards a catch. Now, this is what's crazy. Vlad McConkey was not a factor in this game. He actually had negative yards receiving, but every other Georgia wide receiver had over 10 yards a catch. So Georgia was just hitting big play after big play after big play. This was a big worry for Ohio State coming into this game. We saw Michigan. They stopped Michigan running the ball pretty well. Besides like 2 or 3 big runs, Michigan did not run on Ohio State. And besides just a couple big passing plays for touchdowns, Michigan did not pass on Ohio State. Georgia, they did the Michigan formula, but they stuck with it and they continued to hit it. A lot of deep balls, a lot of plays outside the numbers, down the field, and ultimately it led to a Georgia win. But the play of the game, in my opinion, Kirby Smart taking that timeout before that 4th down fake punt that Ohio State had dialed up. Let's be honest, Rossi for Ohio State on that fake punt, he was easily getting that. He was getting like 4 or 5 yards on that, and it was like 4th and 1, 4th and 2. So someone upstairs, or either Will Muschamp, I know he's the special teams and assistant D coordinator, like assistant to the head coach. I'm sure he had eyes on that, or someone up in the booth was telling Kirby. Because there's a video of Kirby Smart on the sideline and then the play going simultaneously at the same time. You can see Kirby Smart calling for a timeout, and the referee did not hear him initially, or he heard him and just didn't see him. And then he called it like snap of the finger right when the ball was snapped. Ended up getting a timeout, and in my opinion, that probably saved Georgia's season. Because if Ohio State gets that first down, this game does not go how it went at the end of the fourth quarter. But the last 2 minutes of this game were absolutely insane. Georgia went right down the field. Donnie Mitchell caught a 10-yard catch in the end zone to take the lead with 54 seconds left, 42-41. Now, me personally, I thought that was way too much time to give Ohio State. I saw Stetson Bennett look up at the scoreboard and see 54 seconds up there, and you could tell by his facial expression, he's like, oh man, we gave CJ Stroud too much time. I saw this guy at the Heisman ceremony. I've been watching this guy all year. This offense, we haven't been able to stop him. But Georgia did end up stopping them. Held Ohio State to a field goal attempt. Noah Ruggles went up. I don't know if it was the hold or he just pulled it really bad, but he missed badly to the left, and Georgia ultimately won this game. Now, another thing about the second half of this game, the last 25 minutes of this game, Ohio State did not score a touchdown. After lighting up Georgia for the first 2 quarters and 5 minutes, the last 25 minutes, Ohio State didn't score a single touchdown. And that's what let Georgia get back into this game. Georgia scored 18 points in the fourth quarter. Ohio State scored 3. So no touchdowns by Ohio State, mixed with Georgia taking advantage of the opportunities, even though they missed a couple field goals. Like Georgia, they got in the red zone so many times tonight and either took themselves out of the red zone or had to settle for a field goal and missed. Georgia probably let 21, 24 points on the board in this game, which is just crazy to think about given they scored 42. But they really left a couple points on the board, a couple touchdowns. But ultimately, they got the win. They're going to the championship game. They're going to be playing TCU. I can't wait for that game personally. I thought the playoff was great this year. The 4 teams I got in, 4 best teams. A lot of people thought Alabama. Yeah, Alabama, they might beat TCU and Michigan after yesterday. Who knows? I mean, Alabama in the playoffs is just a different animal. But I'm just glad that we got 2 great games. And I'm hoping the championship's just the same. With that being said, Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to go check out the Michigan vs. TCU game recap. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.